Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why I'm confident the Klint Kubiak interview with the Las Vegas Raiders is going to be some good news. Let's face the facts here. If you bleed silver and black, if you're a Raider fan, I'm not saying that you're not interested in having a good time with your family today on Saturday. I'm not saying that you're not interested in watching the Senior Bowl. I'm not saying that you're not interested in WWE Royal Rumble, but I do think the number one thing that people are interested today is how the hell did that Klint Kubiak interview go? Now, at the time that I'm recording this video, I have no idea if the interview has happened. I honestly do not think that the interview has happened yet. I believe it's going to end up happening later on today. So today, what I'm going to tell you is why I think that this interview is going to be good for the Silver and Black. I know we got burnt last year by Ben Johnson. I just don't think that it's going to happen this year. 2026 feels like the nation's year. And if you're looking for commitment to excellence from John Spytek, Tom Brady, I also want you to look at commitment to excellence from me and my team here at Chat Sports. Chuggs and I gave up our off day. Why? Because we wanted to be able to keep you guys up to date, and we will be live a little bit later on today for some updates around Klint Kubiak and all things going on, whether it's Raiders, whether it's Cardinals. If it has to do with Kubiak, we're going to be talking about it on this show. Let's go to the first reason here why I'm confident in Klint Kubiak being the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I think sometimes people got to sit back and look at the job. And not just necessarily the job from offense and defense, though I made an argument earlier in the week. When you look at the Raiders' defense from every single statistical category, it's a better job than the Arizona Cardinals. But if you're talking just the offensive side of the football, because Klint's going to be the one who calls plays, and as an offensive-minded coach, you get to work with the presumed number one overall pick and Fernando Mendoza, if you choose him. You get to work with Ashton Genty, a running back that I do think is a top 5 talent at the running back position in the NFL. A lot of things people could say. I think he should have won the Heisman last year. Then you look at Brock Bowers. I believe the number one tight end in the National Football League. Rookie contract, rookie contract, rookie contract. When you got 3 pillar players like that on your offense, I do think that that would fire up somebody. On top of that, the second most money in salary cap space. And now we're going to get, I think it's like an extra 20 to 30 more because the NFL is going up. You got 10 picks in total, obviously including that number one overall pick. 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. So, like, to me, if I was an offensive-minded head coach and I were to be comparing the Cardinals' job to the Raiders' job, I would say without a doubt the Raiders' job is the better job. But even if the Cardinals' job wasn't in this equation, I do think it's an extremely attractive position. Not saying it's a better job than Seattle, but the Raiders' head coach is a better job than the Seattle OC. And I'll sit up here and I'll stand 10 toes on that. Let's go to the next reason why I'm confident that Klint is going to be coming here. You get to pick your quarterback. And if there's been one organization, one fan base that knows how difficult it can be to find your quarterback, because it's not always about finding the most talented quarterback, right? I could have sat up here and said that I really did think that Geno Smith was going to be a good QB. Unfortunately, he wasn't the right guy for us. Some people might have said the same thing about Jimmy Garoppolo. Some people might have said the same about Gardner Minshew. At the end of the day, you got to find your quarterback. And I hope that Fernando Mendoza is Klint Kubiak's quarterback. You went undefeated this past season with the Hoosiers. You just beat Miami 27-21 in the national championship game. You got a dude that shows up in the biggest moments of the game. And to me, I do think that winning is contagious. So having somebody like Fernando Mendoza that I think matches perfectly with a guy like Tom Brady, somebody that matches perfectly with an offense very structured like Klint Kubiak, and I put this out there on social media. If you want to give me a follow, I'm at Mitchell Renz 365. But what I outlined here was the decision-making process by the Raiders this past season. They thought about trading for J.J. McCarthy. That was confirmed yesterday on social media. They were not interested in Sam Darnold. They traded for Geno Smith. They traded for Kenny Pickett. You made Aiden O'Connell the third-string quarterback. You drafted Cam Miller, who's not on the team anymore. You draft him a lot. Now, I get it. They drafted him a lot to be a wide receiver, but I just thought it added to the conversation a little bit. My biggest point of this is this. making quarterback decisions is difficult, and finding the right quarterback is extremely tough. So if I was a head coach and I believed in a quarterback, that would be a desirable job for me. I think a lot of times fans go, well, Ben Johnson didn't pick the Raiders because we're the Raiders. I actually don't think that that's the case. I think Ben Johnson took the Bears job because they had Caleb Williams, and we had a whole lot of nothing, no disrespect to Aiden O'Connell. So at the end of the day, having your quarterback is literally the start of getting this thing going in the right direction. But obviously, I'm not going to blame any fan if they type 1 here. And I wouldn't. And I say that because we've been burned so many times. So give me your honest answer down below. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's program. What's your confidence level? Klint Kubiak takes the Raiders head coaching job 1 from 10. I'm going to go 5. And the reason I'm going to sit here and say that it's a 5 to me is because until it happens, I'm going to be nervous, right? You could hire Klint Kubiak. You could hire Sean McVay. You could hire Jesus Christ himself. I'm going to be nervous until this news actually drops because we've been burned by Cliff Kingsbury. I don't want to say we were burned by Ben Johnson, but I do remember a lot of Raiders beat reporters essentially saying that it was going to be a done deal, and then he ended up going to Chicago. I know that all the reports indicate that Klint Kubiak and the Raiders, that's probably going to happen. But until I actually see it, until the dotted line is going to be signed, I am going to be nervous about it, but it's because I care, and I've wanted Klint Kubiak all along for the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's go to the next reason here why I'm confident that Kubiak's going to be the next head coach of the Silver and Black. Davis Webb backing out. Timing is everything in the NFL. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Dominoes fall. And if you didn't see, I talked about this earlier in the week, that Broncos pass game coordinator Davis Webb withdrew his name from consideration from the Raiders head coaching job. Webb interviewed with the Raiders for a second time this past Monday, and based on all the reports that were out there, there was a lot of speculation that the Raiders were definitely considering the idea of Webb. Now, based on what I understand now, it sounds like no matter what, Webb was always going to be the number 2 option behind Klint Kubiak. But for Davis Webb to potentially think that he's going to get this job, and now for him to be where he's at, I think that he knew in his heart of hearts that the Raiders wanted Kubiak, and he was the second choice. Nobody wants to be the second choice. So to me, if you're a guy like Webb, who pass game coordinator, not an OC yet, you're not calling plays in the league, for you to pass up an opportunity where you can be the head coach, I do think it's because you're very confident that you are not going to get the job. Because if you thought you were going to get the job, you just stay a part of this whole process, and then maybe you're able to drive up the asking price a little bit for Denver, who moved on from their offensive coordinator. My point is, because Webb backed out, I think the writing was on the wall that it was going to be Kubiak's job. But you know what? I got 2 more reasons coming up here on the Raiders Report, and these to me are the 2 biggest reasons why I think we're going to be here one day going, we got some breaking news. The Las Vegas Raiders have just hired Klint Kubiak to be their head coach. Before I get into that, though, huge shout-out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks, the big game. It's right around the corner. And if you plan on watching our potential future head coach during this game, then I need you to download the Prize Picks app today. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season outright with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. So as you can see, Drake May, that's the deal. 0.5 pass. Take the more there. Then I'm going to go JSN, Kenneth Walker, Sam Darnold. Give me a little bit of the more on that one. Why? Because I'm going to be rooting for Seattle to beat New England in the big game. Prize Picks is now available in all 50 states. So join millions of users. Join the Chat Sports team. You can even give me a follow on Prize Picks. I'm at Mitchell Renz 365. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Let's go to the next reason here. The timing of the interview. So tomorrow would have been the final day that the Raiders could meet with Kubiak in person for this interview. The Raiders, as I mentioned earlier in this video, flew out to Seattle. They're going to meet with them. They might have met with them already yesterday. We'll talk about it. But to me, Klint Kubiak is interested in this job. And I say that because it's Super Bowl week, right? And if I was a coach during the Super Bowl, I don't care if I'm an advisor, especially if I'm the OC, if I'm playing, I am focused on one thing and one thing only. That's the Lombardi Trophy. I'm focused on what do I got to do to make sure that we win a Super Bowl. So to me, the only way that my attention is going off of that is if I am truly interested in the job. Now, again, I get the fact that he is interviewing for the Cardinals job, but I do think that that's a little bit more of a ploy to drive up the asking price. I'm not going to blame somebody for wanting more years, more money when you talk about the uncertainty around the Raiders head coaching job. I mean, shit, if Kubiak is hired, that's the sixth head coach that we've had since 2021. So to me, though, I do think that the timing of this is interesting. On top of that, I reached out to this person on Twitter, and I have yet to get a response from them. Maybe I'll get a response when I'm live here in a little bit. But this is from Dan Vaines, I don't know, Seahawks Forever podcast. He said, text from a former coworker just now, quote, Kubiak dining with Davis, Mark Davis, second interview for the Raiders, some crying emojis, at my old restaurant, so much for meeting on Saturday. So then I was like, all right, well, that could be anybody. The reason why I also find this interesting, I don't know if y'all remember, I did a video on Ashton Genty with John Spytek, the Boise State running back, after his pro day, and how they were the only team that went out for dinner. Interviews are something, don't get me wrong, but I do think there is something different when you're able to, like, really, truly sit down and enjoy a meal with somebody. But apparently the restaurant's name is El Gacho. Hopefully I pronounced it right. Best steakhouse in the region. When I was home for training camp, I did a couple captain appearances and actually helped serve Davis and his party when they were in town for the preseason game. This is the more important one. Why? This clearly says that this is a very nice, if not the best, steakhouse spot in the region, that this is a spot that Mark Davis has visited before. And if, in my opinion, if I really wanted to be able to impress somebody, I would take them to a spot that I personally love and that I know is going to be a home run. And if it's known for being the best steakhouse spot in the region, that also tells Klint Kubiak right away. It's like a date, right? If you're going on a first date and you take that date to Applebee's, I don't know if you're going to be eating good in the neighborhood later. Now, if you take that date out to the nicest steakhouse in the region, that date's going to feel a lot better about the date that they're being on. And I think from the moment you start talking to Klint Kubiak, he's got to know he's the prettiest girl in the room, and he's got to know that we want him to be a frickin' Raider. Let's go to the final reason here. And I'm going to mention Klint's dad, Gary Kubiak. Now, I had a fan send me a photo from something from many, many years ago back. It was talking about John Spytek and Kubiak. And I'm not going to show the photo because we have the entire quote here, but I'll just say this. We know the Raiders' job is a coin toss, right? No doubt about it. And when you see this quote, I think this quote's really not only going to convince you that he's going to be the coach of this team, but I think it also really convinces Klint that if your dad buys in, that might be the cherry on top, right? Like, let's say you're sitting on that fence. You're sitting on the fence not knowing whether or not you're going to take that job. I'll tell you this right now. If my dad said, hey, I think that this is a good job for you, that would be enough reason for me to go, all right, you know what? If I was 50-50 on it, I'm going out and I'm taking that job. So while Denver went on to make the playoffs, this is from The Athletic on Kubiak and Spytek's relationship. While Denver went on to make the playoffs for the fourth season in a row, the front office felt the team, led by Peyton Manning, was capable of more. So obviously this is back in 2014, 2015. That led them to fire coach John Fox and replace him with Gary Kubiak in 2015. When Kubiak was getting up to speed that offseason, he leaned on John Spytek. The reason why this reminds me a little bit of the Pete Carroll situation is because John Fox was a very well-liked coach in Denver. And I know that Pete Carroll was only here for a short amount of time, but Pete early on was a very well-liked coach. They moved on from him because they felt like this team was a lot better. And I'm not saying that this team is Super Bowl ready, but I will sit up here and say with a proper coaching staff, the Raiders aren't picking number 1 overall. That I can guarantee it. But here's what Gary Kubiak, Klint Kubiak's dad, had to say about current Raiders GM John Spytek back in the day when they worked together in Denver. What I remember about Spy is he was one of the people that was giving me a grasp on the team. What I had, what they thought our strengths were, what we had to do to continue to move forward and have a chance to win a championship. He helped me get comfortable with the team so that I could get in there and work with my coaches and start to break down our needs and get ready for the draft. He was a big, big asset to me. So that's Gary Kubiak saying that current Raiders GM John Spytek was a big asset to him when he was in Denver, when he won a Super Bowl in his very, very first year. Because there was overlap in 2015. Again, like my dad, I've said this before, my dad's my best friend. I don't know the exact dynamic between Klint Kubiak and Gary Kubiak. But I do think this. For a coach to follow in his dad's footsteps, I think that shows you that he loves his dad, he cares about his dad, and he truly respects his dad's opinion. So again, to me, you can say the Raiders' job is this. You can say that Klint Kubiak is that. But I'm looking at all of y'all right now, and I'm only going to speak for, again, if you got a dad in your life, it's one of those things. But if your dad were to look at you and go, this is a guy to work with, I think that you're going to have success here. To me, that would be another reason of me going, that's the job I'm going to end up taking. So here's why I'm confident that Klint Kubiak is going to be the next Raiders head coach. It's a great job for him. With Genti, with Bowers, Fernando Mendoza, you get to pick your own quarterback. That smells like a recipe for success for an offensive-minded head coach that's going to call his own plays. Davis Webb backing out. I think he backed out because he knew the Raiders were all in on Kubiak. The interview timing, the Raiders meeting him with on Saturday. Apparently Mark Davis had dinner with him on Friday. That timing to me, extremely interesting. And then Gary Kubiak, Klint's dad, saying that John Spytek was a big reason why we won a Super Bowl in my first year with the Denver Broncos. Now, if you guys are looking for commitment to excellence, again, I'm getting ready to go live. I plan on being live within the hour, so make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on. And if you're a Raiders fan that's just sitting here on Saturday going, what the hell's going on with Klint Kubiak? Pull up to our live Raiders show to find out what's going on.